All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Furlough Podcast. It's my great pleasure to have on Tilda Del Toro, and I hope I say that right because I'm horrible when it says the people's name. But I am so happy you're on.
You said it right.
I
I
did.
said
It. All right. I get so nervous, I'm like, man, you never want to kind of make somebody feel weird, like they're like, this guy doesn't know who I am. Yeah. It's just
it
that
right.
awkwardness. I hate starting off on the wrong foot.
No. That's very sweet of you.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. Like I was saying, we have talked on another program about a month or so ago before Capone came out, or before I had watched it. And I will say I watched it, and I want to tell you that I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed they didn't have you in there more. I was like, I was all ramped up, and I was like, you had a nice spot. I just really thought.
Yeah.
I was hoping that role, that character that you played, for the people that haven't seen it yet, you should go see it, first of all. But for the ones that haven't seen it, you played the mistress. And I just really thought that was going to go somewhere in that movie. That just really, I have a feeling. I just feel like they missed out on it.
Oh, thank you. It's an interesting thing. I respect the filmmaker, and I respect the film, and so I stand by that. That there, obviously, you understood what my position was in the film, without revealing, but meaning, who I was, and in terms of everything, and, being the mistress and stuff. But I respect the filmmaker. And so
Absolutely.
I certainly stand by that. And I'm honored to be working with such, awesome people.
Yeah, great. Tom Hardy, I mean, holy smokes. And we had discussed that, and and I'll ask it again because most people may not listen to the other one, but he is a very in-depth actor, and I wanted to ask you again for everybody to hear this one is how was it working with him, and and because he's a wide range actor, and I think I think those actors, actresses, or whatever that have such a broad spectrum has to be interesting to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would say that something was coming in. Well, okay, so I try not to think about who people are when I work with them. I just maybe it's a technique, but I focus on what I'm doing, who I am. It's really important for me to make choices and never ever look for approval or so I just say that in terms of just working with somebody you might admire. So that's sort of a meditation mentality that's important, I think. Tom, so the reason I bring that up is because I watched some of the movies I hadn't watched before that Tom did before I worked with him, but I tried not to make it something very separate from me. I tried to be very objective about it, and and then I just leaned on what I thought was important before I got on set, which we can talk about that if you want. Tom, so it was almost like after I worked with him that like I kind of really started, I hate to say this, but I think, I know a lot of women love Tom, you know what I mean?
I mean, it's a man. What do you say? I mean,
yeah. But I always look at him as like a guy's guy more, so, and I'm not like that type of person who, like, I tend to admire people for stuff that they did. Like, I mentioned Ryan Gosling in an interview recently, and I hope that doesn't like get the wrong way, because I don't have any, like, I just respect I just respect what Ryan Gosling does, specifically within his acting, and something very specific. So I brought it up. But my whole point is that, like, it's, you know, I wasn't thinking about Tom the way some people think about him before I worked with him.
Right.
And I, you know, I've gotten a lot of, you know, guys, you know, before and after, because before I worked with him, there was sort of an announcement that I was about to work with him. And then afterwards, and even just in, you know, I still do acting classes, you know, pre-COVID, you know, or I workshop with people, and, you know, had someone come up to me and just like, you know, I'm so sorry. Just like, I have the biggest man crush on, you know, Tom Hardy, and, you know, and it was, yeah. So I was like, yeah, so I feel like he's more of a guy's guy, you know what I
Oh
mean? I
yeah,
know that
absolutely.
women gush over him, but I didn't see him that way. I did, however, hugely respect like his work. I watched quite a bit of stuff before I, you know, worked with him, just to sort of just to see if I could catch anything. It's the same thing I did before, when I knew that I was in the running for, before I read for the part, I watched Josh's film Chronicle. And
Okay.
what I'm trying to do is sense them through their work. And I'm also starting to introduce to my brain, these are people that I'm going to be surrounding myself with. I do that intentionally with that in mind.
Okay.
Like, you know, it's almost like not to freak myself out, kind of, in a way, because when you have a dream, it has nothing to do with them. When you have a dream, you know, we all react to it differently, but you want to stay focused and you want to stay real.
Would you say that you're just kind of trying to normalize the situation to where instead of getting excited about it, it's like, okay, this is what I do. I'm with these people, and this, you know, this is just a normal day. This is we're gonna get in there and get the work done.
Yeah, and I normalize it not to make it less important, but so that I'm thinking clearly.
Yes.
So that I'm giving the best that I can give. So that when I show up on set, there's no bullshit in my mind about, like, stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like
It
me, I
doesn't.
took a shower and shaved before I even got on this virtual thing. But I was like, I gotta clean up a little bit.
Thank you. During COVID time, I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably like, you know,
Even virtually, right? You got to clean up. You got to make sure your hands are washed.
I'm like, I'm taking off my pajamas today? What? No.
Yeah. But no, that's good. I've been following you. I've been following you a little bit. I still haven't seen Night School yet. I've been trying to get a chance to see it. And I did watch some clips, and you know, of course, the clip that you posted, you know, meeting your husband outside, you know, at night getting ready to go eat. And I just got to laughing because
yeah,
I don't, you know, God, I hate giving stuff away, but you know, just he told a tale and you kind of caught him in it, and the kids were just, you know, what I loved about the kids is that's how my son would look at me like, "What'd you say?" And they were just calling him out on it.
yeah, those kids are great and talented, and they're still going strong, you know, booking work left and right. And you know, Al Madrigal played my husband in that movie, and you know, Al's just hilarious, and so funny, especially in regards to sort of, I would personally say also, like, because I'm first generation. I'm, you know, born in America, and so it's interesting when you grow up with Spanish parents, but you grow up in American culture, and I think Al just understands that so well, because I don't know if he was born in America, but I feel like he's similar to me in that way, where it's like we're just a different elk a little bit. We're like, you know, first generationers, and we have our our cultures are mixed up with like our American values and then our parents. And so because of that, we sort of have an objectivity as well.
Yeah.
In terms of like how funny, like, you know, our parents are in
Mm-hmm.
some ways. And,
Well, I
you
gotta
know,
ask a question then. I gotta jump in and ask a question because
yeah.
I have some Spanish friends and stuff, and
Uh-huh.
I want to get your perspective. Totally different area, you know, your first generation stuff. Do you have Spanish friends or family members that, because the Spanish language is a beautiful language, it just rolls, it sounds so good. Do you think, you know, when he kept changing he was just accentuating hygienist and saying it different, and the
Yeah.
kids were calling him out on it. Do you feel
Yeah.
like do you have friends that just there's certain things they can't help but just accentuate with that Spanish tone?
Yeah, we you must be like reading my wavelength, because that's just what I was about to
Oh
say.
shit.
I was about to talk about my mother, and I wasn't thinking about Al either, but
Yeah.
it's just so like that's just one of the things. So like my mom, like she can't say jacuzzi.
Okay.
So she, you know, and my mom's been in the United States since she was like 11, like really young, you know. But so my mom said can't say jacuzzi. She says coochie coochie, you know. And I'm like, Mom, no.
That's awesome.
Sometimes she calls people lady, you know, like she'll be like, excuse me, lady. And I'm like, Mom, don't call people lady, you know. She also like doesn't say Trader Joe's. Like she says like Sloppy Joe's. She'll be
Sloppy
like,
Joe.
oh, like let's go to Sloppy Joe's. And then the other day she was like, oh, because she really wants me to come spend, you know, quarantine with her. And I'm, you know, I'm just being cautious, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But she was like, oh, like you can come by and we can play Molapi. And I'm like, you mean Monopoly, Mom? And she's like, yeah, let's play Molapi and you can come by. So it's kind of a joke that
Uh-huh.
I have with her, and I kind of call her out on it as a joke when she does it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
a very
It's
the
very
but I just want to say that the other thing about the mispronunciation of the I just did it myself, but is there's also sort of a like because, and not typical about it, but there's also this like, you know, defiance about it, like this is the way I'm saying it, so there's
right.
this like belief like I am
Yes.
saying the correct thing, you know.
Yeah.
So
No matter
that's what
what,
makes it
this is the way.
hilarious. And yeah, and Al does that in the movie when people correct him. He's like, you know, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the way
Yeah.
to say it. Whatever. Let's just move on. My point is, you know, like, because there's always like a strong point that needs to be put across. So
Yeah.
I think that whether that's Latin or not, it seems to be a trend I see, you know, with my family, and then I see it out in the world with other Latin people. So
I just think it's
yeah,
funny. I just notice stuff like that. I'm just like, I just wonder if they do
yeah.
it as a joke or if they're just, you know, sometimes a friend of mine's mother couldn't say Elvis. She always said Evless, and she called him Evless Presley. And I'm like, who's she talking about?
Well, the funny thing is like, I don't know, like, I guess I do it a lot too, but not with English,
Uh-huh.
but not with Spanish, with English, you
Mhm.
know, like I'll just say things wrong. But yeah, I'm not sure how much of it is stubbornness and how much of it is just innocent. Like, what I mean by stubbornness is like, you know, pushing hard to learn the right way to say it, or just being like, you know what I mean,
You know what
you
I
know what
mean?
I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you call your kid when you got 2 or 3 kids and you call them different names and you go, you know which one I'm talking to.
Exactly, exactly. You know, and the kids say something smart aleck back, and you go, you know what I mean. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
exactly. Nothing
yeah,
worse than a kid correcting you. So,
yeah, yeah. My mom loves that. I'm sure even today.
yeah. But you've been acting for a long time. You know, when I say a long time, you started at teenage years, right? Am I saying
Yeah.
that wrong?
No. Yeah. Yeah. I started pretty early. I have mentioned a lot, you know, in interviews and stuff like that. I was really just fortunate to grow up in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I don't know why, you know, I wanted to be an actress, you know what I mean? Like, you know, people always want you to sort of pin down, like, why, like what inspired you? And I can tell you some things that inspired me, and I can tell you like, things that stuck out to me, and why I mean, I would say that I was always an artist from the
Mm-hmm.
get-go, like, you know what I mean? And I did like visual art, and I'm also very introvert and then extrovert. Like I'm both.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm introvert, I'm very introvert. And before my teens, I was extremely introvert. Um, and so I did a lot of visual art, which I think is very introvert kind of art, where you're, by yourself and you're
Yeah.
painting and you're doing stuff. And then I don't know, like it's just like I don't want to do this anymore. And my parents had no advice for me, but they did kind of teach me, like, in being in a city again, like Chicago, like they did kind of teach me like, hey, listen, take the train. You know what I mean? Like
Toughen you up a little
go,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, get out. And because again, and I say this so much, like there's so much theater in Chicago, and there
Mm-hmm.
has always been, like, either, especially since when I was, there's the, there's Steppenwolf, there's, the Goodman, there's, you know what I mean, there's Looking Glass, and then there's, there's Second City, Improv Olympic, the United Theater, like there's just so many, like, Comedy Sports, like all these people, you know, I just sort of went out and found people, and it was like, for me, it was really important. What else is out there? And like, what else
Mm-hmm.
can I do? And who could I meet? And like, what does that mean? And wow, that's so different. And so yeah. So even at a really young age, I was able, and we didn't have a car when I was growing up.
Oh,
My
okay.
parents never drove. My dad never drove, and my mom didn't either. So it wasn't, even as a teen, wasn't foreign, and they were okay with it. They get on the train, and you know what I mean, and like go downtown and go to a museum, or they were okay with that. you know
Oh yeah. Well, I have a friend of mine, and and it's kind of weird. He's always wanted to be an actor. Okay, and he always made excuses, and because where we live, there wasn't a whole lot of that going on. And he traveled a lot through his years with his family, moved a lot and everything. So finally, we bugged him. It's like, he's just over 40, and I mean, we bugged him. He said, "Man, if you're doing it, just go do it. They need actors of all ages." And finally, we pressured him into it, and he started doing it locally with a lot of small independent groups and stuff like that. And he's really good, and it just bit him. And I went with him on a couple of things. And to kind of echo your point earlier, I've never seen myself as an actor or anything like that, but I was very intrigued with the movie making process.
hmm
I was sitting there, I was like, man, this is pretty wild. So I have gained a lot of interest in the movie making process, and I love
yeah.
movies. I've always loved movies more than anything else as far as TV or anything like that. And so to watch it all unfold and everybody's parts and all the moving parts, I think it's more interesting than people realize. I think it's way more in depth than people realize as well, and what it takes to be a good actor or actress.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree when you said that you just love movies. I mean, like Quentin Tarantino just loved movies. You know what I mean? Like he spent time working in I think at that time, like a video store, but you know, he, I've always kept, whenever, since I've known about Quentin Tarantino, I've remembered like, oh, well, the concept of him is how much, not that he went to film school, not that there's anything wrong with film school, but that his pure concept was like the original amateur. Like if you look up the word amateur, it actually is the love of something that you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so your heart, when your heart is there, I don't think it matters like where you're from,
Hmm.
how old you are, you know, uh, that's that's so important. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
anybody who's in it for not that, it's like I just don't even know how they survive, because it is hard work,
It is. It's. I mean,
you know.
to I mean, down the whole spectrum. I mean, if you're an actor, actress, to perform, to know your lines, not only know your lines, but to give it in a realistic fashion. And then you got your, director of photography. Can he see what the writer saw? Does he do what the director? And it's just all these layers of the onion, and then you got to mash it up in a stew. You know what I'm saying? And you
Yeah.
got to hope that you put all the right ingredients in. And it's a fascinating world.
Yeah, and it's a bunch of ingredients from different people. You know what I mean? Like, we're
Oh,
not just
absolutely.
we're talking about like at times hundreds of people putting in their, mixing into the pot,
Yeah.
and uh
And you just
and
hope for that
it,
award-winning
I was
dish,
sort of
right?
a little bit of a film geek myself, and
Uh-huh.
with this quarantine, I've sort of spent some time watching a lot of those. I say this lovingly, film geek kind of videos where they'll talk about like, why did this film go wrong, and why did
Yeah.
and what I want to mention is then outside of that is then the response of millions of people back on to a piece of work, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
starts with like hundreds of people's in their pot, and then it goes out to all these other people and how people receive work.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, I strongly believe, and I think actually for some reason, I feel most of the people on Capone were like this. And I certainly feel like, Tom Hardy is like this, where, you know, you have to have an authenticity about your work where you're making decisions, whether, you think people are going to like them or not, they feel honest to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you do them,
Yeah. Well,
and then,
some characters are unlikable on purpose. I mean, you're
yeah,
supposed to be a heel or you're supposed to be a whatever, and you got to
yeah,
own that. And some
yeah,
people that may be playing that part may in real life like people to like them, and it might be a hard thing to digest. It's like, okay, I've got to upset people. And there was I mean, whether you play the rapist or the racist or the child abuser or something like that, I mean, to be able to play those roles, I look at some of those roles and I think of how could you play that role and digest that and then leave it behind. You know what I'm saying? After the work is done.
well, some people have a hard time with that, like, I read that Sharon Stone could not be around her family, when she did Casino. I know that I've been recently watching a lot of interviews with Daniel Day-Lewis, and it seems that, during the process, he's not so interested in discussing the process. And,
Hmm.
afterwards, for him, but it does seem like, level he puts it to rest. And, you know, there are certainly actors who build techniques where they protect themselves,
Hmm.
and then there are actors who give themselves almost to a fault, you
Like a
know?
Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. So yeah, it's just wild, I guess, and I think about that, obviously it probably wouldn't hurt you mentally or emotionally to play the good person all the time when you're a Kevin Hart, for example,
Tom
but
Hanks.
yeah, Tom Hanks, and
Tom
you're
Hanks.
always, that, I guess I don't know if I guess that's probably what I would lean towards personally, just because I think that I would probably take it on too hard. I could do
Yeah.
action roles and stuff like that, but the tough roles, man, you have to tip your hat to the people that can do the tough roles.
Yeah. And well, you learn that you can't, judge people a lot. And, I have somebody pretty close to me who does play a lot of those characters, personally.
Hmm.
And he was recently in the show Unbelievable, which is just got nominated for a BAFTA award. And,
Okay.
he plays a pretty nasty kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he plays those guys, he looks a specific way, and the way he plays them though is, well, I'll tell you a little story about when I was, I don't know, may know that I trained a little bit with Jimmy Kahn, and with a small group of us, at a place at Studio 4, which this was actually not too long ago. This was maybe, I don't know, four years ago now or something like that. I was involved in Studio 4, which was Franco's studio. We worked on a film that he was working on, and Jimmy's son, Scott Kahn, they're all the same kin. A lot of them studied at Playhouse West, a place called Playhouse West in Hollywood. Anyways, Jimmy obviously is a person who knows how to play bad dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very small group of us. There was only about 10 of us allowed to work with Jimmy. And one older man had come in and was doing a scene from a play where he was playing basically a pedophile and a hitman. Sorry.
That's all right. Oh, I lost her. Let's see if she participates back. While she is, here we go. Here we coming. And we got her back.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's all right. That's the great part. We're just rolling on. That's the great part. That's the great part about technology. So everybody that kind of was wondering what happened, we just had a little feed killed a little bit, but we have her back, and so we're not going to miss a beat. Yeah. So you, the older gentleman was working with Mr. Kahn, and
he was playing a character that agrees to, he's a hitman and he's a pedophile, and he agrees to murder somebody for this family, but in order to do that, he doesn't ask for money. He asks for to date. This is pretty dark stuff. To date their, I think, 13 or 14-year-old daughter, right? And the scene is her meeting him for the first time. And the first time he did it for Jimmy, he was like, being super creepy, you know what I mean? Like, really like playing up that, and, Jimmy just, Jimmy just let him do it, and then said, all right, just drop it. You know what I mean? I just want you to be a guy on a date. And
makes sense.
This sounds so simple, but it's sometimes when you see works of art change in front of you, like in these types of situations, they almost morph in front of you. Mm-hmm. It's almost like when you're looking at a picture that just becomes crystal clear.
Yeah.
And so he dropped the idea that he was a pedophile, basically. Mm-hmm. And he just started to become charming. Mm-hmm. And real. Like, it was the creepiest thing I had ever seen. And Jimmy really taught us that when you play these like people that you would, consider bad people, you just get to the core of the honesty of what they want, not judging them. Don't place your judgment on playing them. I gotta tell you, that was so creepy, like the innocence and the truth of playing somebody like that without commenting, I guess is what I'm saying. When you don't comment that you're a creep.
Yeah.
it's creepier. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my, because it feels more real,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you while you're saying that is in your experience, and I've of course watched from a distance, do you feel like, when I watch movies or I watch people act in person, it's amazing when they can make it almost like themselves, like they're not acting. It's like they say their
Mhm.
lines and it's like us talking right now, versus the more theater style, when in movies, when it's like, man, that's who that person is. And I think that confuses people too, when somebody can deliver such an honest, normal performance. They're like, you kind of look at it and it's like, is that person really that kind of person? To me, that's when it's an amazing artist.
Yeah, and I think that like I love that's very important to me.
Mhm.
And I think that, I really started to get that when I started to really do, a lot of repetition through Meisner. And the reason I think I started to understand that more, you know, meaning I didn't really know when I was starting or ending. And I like that. And again, watching a lot of documentaries with Daniel Day-Lewis lately, I think he doesn't, he mentioned something about like thinking about the process is the last thing he's doing. He's just in the process. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
I don't I don't want to think about the choices I'm making. I just, and I bring up Meisner because Meisner, when we were doing it, we did a lot of stuff like we would do overnighters,
Mhm.
and we would
Sort of like
we
little
would,
lock-ins. Sort of like
yeah,
lock-ins where you just stay all night and just run through different stuff all night.
yeah,
Let
yeah.
me
So
let
we would,
me let me ask you two things before, because if I
yeah,
lose them, if they're on my mind. For most people that don't know Meisner, there's a thing called Meisner method, and that's a
yeah.
method of learning acting. So when she says Meisner, that's what she's referring to. The second thing I'm going to ask you, and this is just a strict question because I don't have an answer. Do you feel that when you've been on set and you've worked and worked and you almost kind of like let that crisp energy off, like when you first get there, obviously you're kind of pumped, you're thinking about what you're going to do, but you're kind of tired and everything kind of mellows down? Do you feel like you almost hit that sweet spot after after you've worked a little while and you kind of in the zone and you're relaxed a little bit? Is that do you feel like that works for you?
Yeah, there's so many elements to that. And I think that everyone, I hope, I mean, I think most people I've come across, their desire is to be that and get to that.
Hmm.
You know, I think the element of, I hate to say this, but like the element of, what your position is on set can be intimidating to some people. So it's very awesome when you're able to do that when you're just starting out and you're coming in for a guest star. I've had friends, who have been, the reason I bring up friends is because I haven't had this experience, but I've, you just get the message like, hey, like you may get left in the dust kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so you got to be ready, and you got to be ready and loose all at the same time. And but in terms of, I think you're also asking about working on something so much that you feel loose
Yeah, you're just
on
kind of,
set.
because when you first come on, right? I mean, I even do it when I do my show. Get a beautiful lady coming on. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure this is working. You kind of like hypertensioned up. You're just like, okay, I got to make everything, got to be so. And then after we talk a while and everything just kind of, it
Yeah.
kind of finds its place. You just kind of relax a little bit.
So I just want to say, the first thing I think is that it is a skill you can teach yourself to, like be like that most of the time, even if you feel nervous or whatever. Like sometimes I feel nervous, even like things I shouldn't feel nervous about, and
Hmm.
I'm aware though that that's just a feeling, because I've also trained myself, and it's actually, I think, through Meisner more than anything, and I can talk about that a little bit more, if we get into that, but that I start to just feel like I can be anything or anyone around anything and anyone. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm myself and I flow. And so once you really start to not only just like want to have that like only when you're working, but I mean like in your life, like you just like adapt that. That's a big deal when you start to go like, I'm willing to expose, or I'm willing to be myself. You know what I mean? So if I don't understand something, I'm going to say, I don't understand that. Can you explain it to me? You know what I mean? If I make a mistake, I'm going to be like, I'm going to make that mistake, like when we first ran through that, that made one of the major scenes in Capone, I knew I was the new kid in that day. You know what I'm saying? So I had to come in with a bang, you know what I mean? And so when we did our first sort of like, okay, everybody in the room, like costume people, you got to come in, like, everybody come in, but in order to be able to do that, to really go in, and I have to be willing to make huge mistakes, you know what I mean? And in order to do that, you have to be willing to be accepted.
Right.
I think this is kind of coming around. So
yeah.
So you actually have to have that in your work too. Like on some level, you just really have to not give up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can say it. Don't give a damn. You don't give a shit. You just
Yeah.
gotta, I'm just going for it. I'm doing it. There's for people
What's
that are
the worst that can happen? You know what I mean? Like, even if you get fired, like,
okay, I gave it a shot.
Yeah. Before Capone, when I booked Capone, my brother was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh no.
And he's okay now and everything.
Okay,
and it was a very strange thing to be going through, like, at the same time. But you know what? Like, like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, do I have cancer? No. You know what I mean? Like, do I respect the work? Yeah. I mean, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that when you're willing to just fully be who you are and take risks in front of anything and anyone, that's when I think you really start to just not apologize for who you are. And you really start to be able to not fake it, and that's what we're talking about with acting, right?
Absolutely.
Like when you can see them faking it, or when it's, you know what I mean? And it's like, I personally, in me, think that's a deep subconscious element that people either need to work on if it's happening in their work in acting, because there's no way to be real in real life. Well, I'm not going to say that. I'm sure there are people in real life. I mean, look at interviews with Brando. He'll be like, he'll talk to Connie Chan, and she's like, I think that's I hope I didn't say her name wrong.
Yeah.
But she'll be like, so, talk to me, and he'll be like, this is so ridiculous. Like, even you and I are, and he'll be like, he says that to her. He's like, you and I are acting like we're just talking to each other, aren't we? But we're not.
Exactly.
Millions of people are watching us.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh yeah, well, that's true. And he's like, come on. You know what I mean? Like,
he got in trouble, I think, or say trouble. People got mad at him one time because he and I think he was just trying to rub people, but he's like, somebody asked him about acting. He says, acting's the easiest thing in the world to do,
I think it's this interview.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, which of course nobody wants their craft to be, brought down, and it's understandable, but he was just like, meh. But he's one of those people, prime example. I think that he goes in and he plays his part. He doesn't try to fake it.
But I'm pretty sure he had a lot of technique go, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah,
you know,
absolutely. He just goes, but he goes in with like what you said as far as feeling, this is what I got to do. I just got to go for it.
yeah. And certainly being around Tom Hardy was, another reminder of that, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like I could see it in him. Like it's like this, he didn't have any apologies about anything he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He was very aware. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that a lot about a lot of people that I admire. I met Lady Gaga once, and
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing, and she performed for a small number of people, and I was, very fortunate to be there and hear her perform. And then afterwards, she was very real. And what I say about real is that, like, she was so present and aware at the same time. Like I was so fascinated because it was like she was so aware that cameras were on her,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? But at the same time, she was so like
Engaging.
real,
Yeah.
engaging. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was very aware. And
Uh-huh.
Tom Hardy is very aware. You know what I mean? Like, so most of the artists that I meet, that I admire and I run into, that's an element that I notice. And so I go like, yeah, that's something I'd really like to have. Like, I'd really like to be able, um, it's almost like there's something called like the witness that, a couple of friends of mine have been talking about. I guess there's a book about it where you're able to sort of be in the moment and at the same time objectively see what's happening. Do you know what I'm saying? And
Almost
it's a
like an
sort of a
out of
zen.
body.
Yeah. Athletes talk about it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. You know what I mean? So yeah.
That's hitting that next level
Yeah.
though. That's hitting that, it's, you almost see something from a different angle, even though you're in the moment,
Yeah.
it's a wild thing. But,
Yeah.
even for
That's
you,
when the magic, I think that's magic when that happens. You know
oh
what I mean?
yeah,
Like, yeah.
it's, yeah, that's when you're on point. But even for you, I mean, you've had some really good roles. What is, what are we going to see from you in the future? I mean, what do you see you doing shortly, and what kind of roles do you want?
Yeah. I've been oddly, the quarantine and
Hmm.
has really had me, thinking about that.
Hmm.
Um Oddly, when we're generations that have never been, connected to a war or any, those are just things we
Absolutely.
would, yeah.
We've
So
we've had a fairly easy life, and so
yeah.
it's messing us up big time.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, some funny memes going around like, your grandparents were asked to go to war and you're just asked to stay in your house with your TV on.
Yeah, yeah.
But it has gotten me to think about, like, oh, how do I want to impact the world now? Do
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, it's not about me so much. Like, well, let me take that back. What I'm trying, it's it's never been about me. Like, I don't lead with that kind of stuff. I am interested in my experience.
Sure.
I want to say, yeah. Um, Not so much interested in the outcome of the experience. I think when I was, just starting out, like in Chicago, like what it meant for me to be successful was really important. And that was because I wanted to make my dad really proud of me. That was a big part
Right.
of me wanting to be more than just, not successful,
You
Um,
wanted him to know that you were doing with something that was fulfilling and all that good stuff.
yeah, I wanted his life to mean something extended outside of his own life, because my dad is somebody who I feel sacrificed his whole life for.
Mm,
He's this very blue collar. My dad is a blue collar guy. He
okay.
had, I think, 3 jobs his whole life.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was dedicated to what he was doing at the time.
yeah. And we certainly were middle class and probably lower middle, not like, my
Yeah.
parents worked really hard for us to be in the better neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and, I'm just saying, like, we didn't own a house or anything, but, I never knew the difference.
Sure.
Like, if I asked for a bike, I got a bike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I became very aware of that, though, as I got into my teens, and I always wanted to make my dad just really proud, because I knew that he did sacrifice for us,
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't imagine working in a factory, but because my mind is so different, like so
Yeah.
creative and stuff. I can't sit still that long. But I forgot what I was saying. I was saying something about that was connecting into
What you were going to leave. I mean, what's the purpose of what you're going to do? Do you feel like you're doing this
oh
to leave something, your mark, if you will?
yeah, okay, so I've always wanted, so my interest in my future is I think it's important to tell stories that nobody's ever told.
Yeah.
you know um I think that I also strongly believe in the quality of work, meaning, like, I personally really enjoy understanding that I'm working, with the best type of like that I'm creating with people that are so passionate at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with money, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That has to do with attention to detail,
Right.
and artist and skill. So just want to make that clear. That has nothing to do with, like, oh, I mean, like, only high budget. No,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about the integrity of the,
Of the product.
yeah. And I just want to say that, like, that's how I felt on Capone. Like, everybody, Peter Deming, who, was the DP, like, you know, Peter Deming has worked with David Lynch, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that these people's resumes are what, like, are important. I'm talking about, like, what I noticed was their attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you could have told me, like, I could have not even known who they were, meaning, like, what they did. Some of them I didn't know when I was working with them, but it's like, but you just see it in the behavior, right? So I did already kind of touch into that, like, as part of what I want for my future. What kind of parts do I want to play? Well, obviously I want to play, bigger parts that are more involved. you know
Absolutely.
um I love period pieces, just because I'm sort of like, that would be like my thing.
Now, when you say period pieces, you like to get dressed up like you did in Capone and get the cool outfits and things of that nature?
Yeah, you know what? I'm super into, like, also, like, archaeology and, like, the Greeks and, like, you know what I mean, and the
Oh, you
Romans.
could. Hey, you could pull off a new Tomb Raider. You got that
Yeah,
look.
totally,
You could
totally.
pull it
Like,
off.
yeah, and that, like, right, that goes into, like, fantasy worlds and stuff. And
Hmm.
I'm a huge fan of, Joseph Campbell, and
Hmm.
the work that he did. And so myths and mythologies, and I love that stuff personally. I also really want to do very raw work. I love films that are, look very real. They're gritty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just
They, yeah,
yeah, no,
yeah,
yeah. They just have that, like you feel like you're watching something that really happened a few years ago, or maybe 10 years ago. Something that's just like
yeah,
almost,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Like, this is real, you
yeah,
know? It may be a little uncomfortable or something, but, I'm not one. Movies are just here to entertain me.
hmm,
You know what I mean? And I certainly don't feel entertained when I'm working on parts that are hard for me to work on.
yeah,
Like we talked about earlier. I think that, my friend who, did work on Unbelievable, I don't know if you know about Unbelievable, but it deals with, sexual harassment, and
mm,
was based on a Pulitzer Prize, I think, article.
okay. I haven't seen
And
it.
yeah, it's on Netflix.
Okay, I have to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, he plays a lot of characters like that. And he was pretty mean to her. And I myself, about a year ago, had an incident where I had a person who had a little bit of power over me that was, sexually harassing me, and it was very similar to the
Oh,
show. And and you know, when that was happening, this person said to me, because he was hearing some of the dialogue that this man was kind of giving me,
mm-hmm.
and he's like, I'm so glad, that I played that character in Unbelievable, because that's the guy that I played,
Oh,
kind
wow.
of thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And he's like, my part is that I showed that these people exist, kind of thing. You
Yeah,
know
that
what I
kind
mean?
of yeah, it kind of gives you, instead of feeling weird about playing the part, you almost feel like you're doing your part to expose and teach in a way, in a weird way, what to look for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so did he give you advice over that particular person?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
He did.
gave his
He
input
did.
on it. That's good.
He
That's
did.
good.
It was,
It,
I mean, his advice was not to engage,
yeah.
so much. But I engaged a little because,
Hmm.
because I am a survivor of sexual assault,
Oh
and
no.
I'm older now, and that happened, really young. And
Yeah.
so I kind of fight sometimes, I kind of go
Hmm.
like, hey, like, hold on, like, I feel a duty to be like, excuse me. But, not to get into it too much, but I didn't handle it that way in the beginning. I certainly was just kind of like in shock, and, like, was just kind of like, wasn't aggressive, because I
Hmm.
was, identifying what was happening, and, stuff like that. And,
Maybe try
um,
not to jump the gun. You wanted to make sure, okay, this is really what's going on, kind of thing.
yeah. And you also subconsciously go into survival mode. Like, you're not gonna ruffle something until it's like, like,
Yeah.
you're just like, and I actually didn't realize it was happening until it happened, until it was like one thing, like, I think it was happening before I realized it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, you know, but because of that, you know, like, I'd be really interested in telling that story, you know what I mean? And, I'd be interested in also playing a character that does that,
Mm.
because when I do that, I'm representing somebody that someone else can watch and go, I've met that person. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess, yeah, what we're saying is that when you play those characters, you are contributing to the better of it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, that's what I believe. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
you're putting out identifiers, right?
Yeah. And I'm not, I mean, like, I understand if it's gratuitous, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
like, we need to, I get it. And that's not, but I'm saying identifying it, it's exactly right what you just said. The
Mhm.
identification of them
Yeah,
is like,
not glorification, just identification.
thank you. That's a really great way to say it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have my
Mhm.
moments. I have my moments there.
You have more than just moments. Yeah. You seem pretty awesome.
Oh, I appreciate it. Like I said earlier, flattery will get you everywhere with me. But no, I'm excited. I'm excited about seeing you in more stuff. Again, I
Yeah.
harped on it earlier. I would like to see. I would have liked to have seen
I'll talk a little bit about that, but
that
yeah.
role. Yeah, I would like to. I like to have seen that role of you as the mistress with Capone, even if it's not a Capone movie. I think setting that time frame and the way men, or way, I shouldn't say way men were, powerful men maybe at that time, had mistresses, and it was maybe understood but not talked about. And I think that that would make a very interesting, if you took a powerful figure and you really, in that time period, the 40s, 50s and stuff like that, when world was kind of changing, it's a little misogynistic, but kind of, going over the curve of more women's liberation, and how wives dealt with their husbands and whatnot. I think that would be I think that could be a fascinating movie.
I do too. Like, I think if maybe like what you're going at is like what would also be a cool film is like, Capone's women. I mean, it's still derivative of a male, but
Sure.
I had an idea years ago about Diego Rivera and his women. You know what I mean?
I
Because
know
he was
Diego
associated.
Rivera. I'm trying to think of
Uh,
who that is.
he was Frida Kahlo's husband, and just think of him as like let's just say Picasso. Like,
Okay.
if we were to look at the women that were associated with Picasso, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, who
Sure.
were these women? Like,
Right.
um, but in terms of Capone, um, there's a specific style that Josh is telling the story, and
Hmm.
it's pretty consistent through the film,
Hmm.
and you know I respect that, and I sort of stand by that, and there is a way I think that Josh is telling the story where he wants you to think about the story.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah, and so
Because to
that,
be fair, I've
yeah,
constantly thought about it. I was like, man, I just think that, I won't let it go.
yeah, yeah, and one thing you can say about Capone is that it's gotten very strong reactions
Hmm.
on so many levels, and that's good. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
absolutely.
Like, yeah. So, and
And I'll give one part away, and because hopefully
yeah,
everybody will watch it. Prime example, what you just said, because of the way he did it. Do you, can you imagine, even 20 years ago, whatever, them doing a Capone movie where he sold himself? No way. I
where he
think that,
sold himself.
yeah, soiled himself when he was sitting in the
Oh, right.
chair, and
Yeah.
you know,
That's all over the internet. So don't worry
he
about that.
yeah, okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, they would have never did that 20 years ago. They would have never put
Yeah.
Capone in that light. They always
Yeah.
played him as the macho tough guy. They never played him as the moments of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what happened in the bed with his wife when his wife woke up and she looked, it's like, what in the world? They would have never done that in the past. I mean, that
Yeah.
just wasn't the mindset of movie making. And
Yeah.
today they will totally show even the toughest of men in their most vulnerable states, because we all have vulnerable states.
Yeah. And I think we're rolling more into that in the future of film. I think that, I think that there's like, when you look at sort of, Stanley Kubrick, and, you look at, like, let's just say The Shining.
Hmm.
So there's this, even then, so there's a very fine line between the fantasy of it and
Hmm.
the realism, right? You see, I think you definitely see it in Joker as well, right? You see
Oh,
like
absolutely.
this rawness, but then you go like there's these cinematic things that make it a piece of art. And
Yeah.
so, but you forget you're watching a piece of art on some level. And I think Capone had as well, where it has these sort of, very real things that happen to people. Like,
Hmm.
and yes, absolutely. Like, nobody ever considered showing Al Capone the way that Tom Hardy was willing to show it, and the way Josh was interested in showing.
Right.
And I think I read that Josh had, like, I don't know, just sort of had a thought one day, like, he was inspired, and then he was like, I wonder what that was like. You know what I mean? To like
Hmm.
be like, why don't we talk about that? Personally, I would just say, I mean, being real talk here, like, I don't personally enjoy the glorification of anybody who like gangsters and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah.
Although I do love I love Goodfellas. I do love the films. I'm not saying that, but
Mm-hmm.
I welcome seeing the realness of what these people went through.
Right.
And what I'm saying is I think film is going further into that.
Okay. I mean, and that's
So
good stuff. I mean, well,
yeah.
I'm happy in that sense because the one thing that I've been disappointed in Hollywood and movie making for a while in the early 2000s, it just seems like they were trying to tell the same old stories, and you're just kind of like, all right,
Yeah.
this is just like such and such movie from '85, or this is just like an early '90s movie. I think there's a lot of movies that are coming out that are just different, if you will. They've done a few movies that are similar to other movies, like I watched a movie. I'll plug them real quick. I watched a movie on Prime the other day called Knives Out. And if you haven't seen Knives Out,
I definitely want to see that.
it's freaking good. But it's really a lot like a movie from the '80s called Clue, you know, based off the
Right.
based off the board game, but they did it in a different way, and it's really, really good. And fantastic actors and actresses in that movie as well. But but movies like Capone and a few others, and they're different, and I think that's a welcome change.
Yeah, and we can also thank people like Christopher Nolan for when we think about, not that there's anything wrong with the Batmans that were done before, but he was the first one to really start, I think, showing Bruce in a very how should I say this, or I would say Christian Bale obviously did this, where the whole Dark Knight series and stuff like that was when they were showing huge weaknesses and of Batman.
Right.
And then of course that's when Heath Ledger came in, when the thing about Heath Ledger was being oddly identifiable in some way.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's like you grow up hating the villains, and when you get older, you kind of identify with what's wrong with them. It's like, yeah, society's drove me to this.
Yeah,
Society has made me crazy.
yeah. And so he kind of took that cartoon aspect out of it a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, not to, but just comparing and just, I'm not
Not to,
criticizing her. Yeah,
and even not to glorify it, he just made it. This is what a psychotic goes through.
right, right. This is not some doll or character, you know what I mean? Like, this
Hmm.
person has human elements that drove him to this.
Hmm.
So
Great role,
I
by the
think
way,
Nolan, yeah, yeah, and I think Nolan had a big part in that,
in shaping that. Okay.
and shaping cinematic, and bringing in terms of the comic book world, 100%.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Batman, if you look at the Joker that Jack Nicholson did, and then you look at the Joker that Heath Ledger did,
Yeah. Two different worlds.
two different worlds, and they
Yeah.
both have their place. But I'm just
Sure.
saying that Heath Ledger was the first one. We were like,
Yeah.
what? This guy looks like somebody that I might find on the street in New York. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. No joke. Made it real. Brought the
Not me
real
saying
to
anything
it.
about New York. Like, I grew up in
You
Chicago.
could say it, New York, nigga, crazy nut jobs. No, I'm just kidding. That's just because they're beating each other to death out there right now. They're all crazy. I said it. She didn't. Everybody calm
Okay.
down. Nobody give her hate mails. Chris said it.
I love New York. Gotham City.
That's right. Hey, it's
Hey, I was shot
funny.
in Chicago, and I grew up in Chicago. You know what I mean? So
But
it's like,
one of my favorite sayings is, I've said this for years and God, I beat it to death, but I always say life imitates art. You look back at some of these movies, you're like, oh, that would never happen. Then so many years later, you're like, oh crap, that happened. It's like, but life definitely imitates art sometimes. So you got to be
yeah.
careful what you put out there, people.
I do think there's power in it, though.
There's
You know what I
influence,
mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah.
that's a great point. It goes back to what you were saying a while ago, is about what you wanted to, what kind of movies you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Movies, television shows, the news outlets. I mean, it can really be a powerful mindset, and it's psyops, if you will. It's psychological. It can be psychological warfare.
Yeah.
If you put out nothing but propaganda for anything, it could be for this or for that. It doesn't matter what. Anything that's just beats something to death can be considered propaganda. So,
Right.
I mean, you can really form young minds and even older minds. It's like, yeah, I feel jaded, or I feel, I think we should do this, or man, I'm really happy because that's empowering and it's bringing us together, so it can really go in any direction. And I wonder, when you have writers and directors and stuff like that, I haven't talked to many writers and directors, but I always think, did they think about that kind of stuff? When you watch a movie like, what was that movie? We Were Titans with Denzel. Is that right? Very powerful, bring us together movie. And then you got
Mhm.
another movie that could Kill a Mockingbird, which can be very separating.
Absolutely.
It can be very
Absolutely. Yeah.
separating and bringing together. And I know that was
Hmm.
based off a book, but that was the one that that was the latest one made, not the one way back in the 60s, but the latest one made was such a powerful movie, and it can, things can make you think. You got fantasy movies and you got action thrillers, but there are movies out there that can really,
Right.
can kind of steer somebody a direction. So I wonder what they think, and like Spike Lee was doing a movie in Alabama, and they were reading for some roles, and I boxed and do jujitsu pretty much all my life, and so
Oh, cool.
they were looking for a guy about my age as a boxing coach, but he was like racist number one, and I was like, I don't know if I want racist number one to be my, because then you start thinking, well, if I do a good job, they're gonna be like, man, he looked pretty comfortable in that, and I was like, I don't want to be, let me do like 10 movies and then maybe I'll do racist number one.
Right.
I
Right.
want, I
Right.
want,
Right.
I want everybody to know I'm just acting. I don't want to be my first, because it'd be my first and only role, and they'd be like, damn, he only did one role and he did a real good job. Racist number one. Just like,
But that happens, like,
yeah,
oddly, that friend I just told you about, like, he too, like, it's called for, that exactly.
yeah,
And, like,
get cast type as whatever, and you're just like, it's like, oh God, not another one.
yeah.
It's like, you have to do a press conference after everything. I just promised I was just really, really good acting.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm not a
Right.
pedophile. I'm not a racist. I don't beat
Right. 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 And I also think maybe that's why those people get awards too sometimes, because it's like, how did you play that character?
Yeah,
Like,
it's like, yeah.
but it goes back to like what I was talking about, I think, like with Jimmy and stuff like that. And it's just like, you don't judge the character, and there's a reason everybody does something, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And you get down to the human needs,
Hmm.
you know, somebody else's villain is another person's hero,
Sure.
and so, when you understand that, I think it gets a little easier to play characters that people might not like.
Yeah. It'd be interesting though. But, I just, I don't know if that's for me. I think I could be good as an extra, and I could be good as I could be good as, like, I could probably be a production assistant. I'm good at finding things. Like they said, we need something to swing, blah blah. I'm like, yeah, I got an idea. I'd probably be good at that. I'd probably fall into those categories. I don't know.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah,
That's
kinda,
all
you need
right.
everybody, right?
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Like, not everybody has to do everything for sure. So,
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. So,
Well,
but
we definitely look forward to seeing you in tons of stuff. I think
thank
that
you.
I think you're the next big thing. I've been telling
Oh,
everybody that,
thanks.
yeah, I've been watching you. I was like, you got the look, you got the personality. I think I just look forward to seeing you in some really pivoting roles.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, thankfully, I feel very grateful that Capone has opened up some doors, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean. And so I'm super grateful, and I just want to do good work and affect people, like we were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that makes them a better person,
True.
or opens their eyes to something that helps them grow. So, that's a nutshell. It's that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I think you've been great, and
Oh, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your time. I know that, even though it's COVID, I know everybody's got busy lives, and it means a lot to me. So we really thank you.
Hey, it means a lot, that you want to talk to me, and you're so genuine, and that's very big deal, and I'm happy to talk to you. Thanks for calling.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hold you to that. That means I'm gonna hit you up from time to time. Every time I see a little buzzy, you're gonna be like, "Oh, let me hit her a message. Let me hit her a message. Gotta get her. Gotta get her."
Sounds
Well,
good.
hang on with me real quick. We'll hit the
Okay.
music out. Make sure everybody to go and check out all of Tilda Del Toro's. I'm
You said it right.
trying. I'm trying.
You said it right.
All her social medias. Check her out in Capone. Make sure you check her out in Night School, and pay attention, because this lady is going to be
Oh,
around, and we're really looking for some big roles for you, and look forward to watching you in the future.
thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Everyone. Bye, everybody.